Growing up in Taiwan and listening to Chinese pop music, I always noticed how they sound a bit different from the Western pop music I was exposed to at the time, whether that's Taylor Swift, Eminem, Green Day, or whatever. And after starting to play guitar and music, I noticed how a big thing that makes them different is the chord progressions they use. So I want to go through 3 popular Chinese chord progressions that are less commonly heard on Western pop songs, starting from the shortest and the simplest to the longest and most complex. Let's get to it. One really popular and simple chord progression used in Chinese pop music is this 1, 5, 6, 5 chord progression. It's a variation of arguably the most common chord progression used in Western pop music, the 1, 5, 6, 4. Used on countless Western pop hits. So this Chinese 1-5-6-5 variation is used on popular Chinese pop songs like So the 1-5-6-5 chord progression is an overall just very happy and positive chord progression. We start off on the 1 home chord, in this case C major in the key of C major. So start off on a pretty strong and just comforting note. And then we move up to the 5 chord, which is not only a major chord, but it's also 4 steps above the major 1 home chord. So it adds to that happy vibe with the majorness, but it also adds hope with this kind of 4 momentum of like going 4 steps above. The numbers here just refer to the order of the chords in the key. So 1 would be the do chord, and the 5 chord would be the so, do, re, mi, fa, so chord. Then we go up to the 6 chord, which is a minor chord, so it adds a bit of melancholy. But it's not too bad since it's 1 step above the previous chord, the 5 chord, so it's quite expected. Not to mention the 6 minor chord is often known as the sibling chord for the major 1 home chord. So it's kind of a comforting feeling of sorts, just a little sad. And finally, we go back to the 5 chord we played earlier, getting back on track to that happy vibe. Also, since we already played this chord once before in the progression, going back to it just makes the overall progression sound very safe and comforting, just very expected. One popular variation of this chord progression in Chinese pop music is the 1, 3, 6, 5 chord progression for a slightly more melancholic sound used on popular songs like Essentially, we just dropped the first 5 chord for a minor 3 chord for a slightly more introspective sound, but still sounds pretty positive overall, just adding a bit of spice. Another really interesting and more hopeful variation is this 1, 3, 4, 5 chord progression used on popular songs like So with this variation, basically we just keep the first and last chords from the original progression and adding in the 2 chords in the middle for a more hopeful ascending vibe. So it goes from the 1 to the 3 to the 4 and to the 5, going higher and higher. That's why it's so fitting for the song I just played called Snail. It's like a snail climbing up little by little until it finally reaches its goal. I'm going to be using a lot of Jay Chou's song examples in this video because he's my favorite artist growing up and just would love to show him to more people, especially to a more Western audience. Another longer but really common chord progression used in Chinese pop music is this 4, 5, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 chord progression. The first half of this progression, the 4-5-3-6, is a really popular progression used in Japanese pop music, known as the Royal Roll progression. I made a video breaking down that progression and many other Japanese popular chord progressions in more detail, so check it out there if you're interested. So this full 4-5-3-6, 2-5-1 chord progression is used on many popular Chinese pop songs like As mentioned, I break down the first half of the progression, the 4-5-3-6, in more detail on a different video, but in short, the 4-5-3-6 progression is a very smooth sounding progression because the chords transition really naturally into each other. So we go from the 4 to the 5, which is very natural because the 5 is just 1 step above the 4, and they're both major chords too. And then we go from the 3 to the 6, which again is very natural because they're both minor chords, plus the 3 chord of a key naturally wants to resolve to the 6 chord of a key. Then finally, we got this classic jazz 2, 5, 1 turnaround. So 2, 5, 1 progression or turnaround works really well because each chord is separated kind of 4 chords away from each other. We go from the 2 to the 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we go from the 5 to the 1, 5, 6, 7, 1. And chords that are separated 4 chords apart sound really smooth when played back to back. Another popular variation of this progression in Chinese pop music is to drop the 5 and make it just 4, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, used on popular Chinese pop songs like With this variation, since we dropped the 5 major chord in the beginning, so we got 3 minor chords played back to back. So it adds to a more melancholic sound. The first half of this progression though, the 4, 3, 6, is actually a very popular turnaround used on many J-pop and K-pop hits too, from big artists like K-pop's New Jeans or J-pop's YOASOBI. Finally, arguably the most common but longest chord progression used in Chinese pop music is this variation of the canon chord progression. So canon is this song composed by the classical musician Pachelbel in 1680 that kind of made this really long progression popular. But the Chinese variation is this 1, 5, 6, 3, 4, 1, 2, 5 progression. The Western alternative, the canon progression, goes like 4, 1, 4, 5 at the end versus this 4, 1, 2, 5. So this canon variation is used on many popular Chinese pop songs like So again, the first half of the progression is just a standard canon progression, and I actually do a more in-depth breakdown too on the Japanese chord progression video I brought up earlier. But to make it short, the first half of the progression is really elegant because all the chords are separated either 2 or 5 chords apart. And it's kind of the golden distance between chords for a smooth transition, really commonly used in jazz. Chords that are separated either 2, 4, or 5 chords apart. Now here comes the interesting part, the final 4 chords that makes this Chinese version different. So the final 4, 1, 2, 5 has an edgier sound while still remaining elegant. So we start off on the 4 chord, which is commonly used as a transition chord. So it kind of gives a sense of hope. It makes the listener think about what's going to come next, anticipate what's going to come next. And then we go to the 1 home chord. So it's a very comforting resolution. We're already going home. After that though, we take a bit of a turn by going to the 2 minor chord. And since it's a minor chord, it adds a bit more kind of spice and just melancholy, but still not too out there because the 2 minor chords still pretty close to the 1 home chord. And finally, we go to the 5 major chord, which is a very smooth resolution because, again, chords that are separated either 2, 4, 5 chords apart sound really natural when played back to back. And the 2 to the 5, it's 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's 4 chords apart. As we've seen, although Chinese pop music didn't invent any of these chord progressions, they alter kind of popular chord progressions used in Western music for a slightly different sound. If you're interested in learning more about different popular chord progressions used in Asian music, check out this video where I break down the most popular chord progressions used in K-pop. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.